They thought they could bury it. They thought they could erase every trace. But once again, the truth has a habit of clawing its way to the surface. Today, we're diving headfirst into the unraveling narrative surrounding Jeffrey Epstein, the missing prison footage, a growing list of powerful connections, and what it all really means. This isn't just about a convicted sex offender. This is about influence, silence, and the lies they want you to ignore. Let's start with a video that reignited the fire. Surveillance footage from Epstein's prison cell block the night he died. Originally, authorities claimed the cameras conveniently malfunctioned. No footage, nothing to see. And for years, that was the accepted story. Until recently, when new footage leaked showing critical gaps in the narrative. It's brief, it's grainy, but it shows just enough to raise serious questions. Why was there no audio? Why were the guards' body cams off? Why did logs not match the time code? If this was a standard suicide, why does the evidence trail scream cover-up? Take a closer look. In one of the leaked frames, Epstein is shown slumped in a corner, but experts point out subtle inconsistencies. The positioning of his limbs, the lack of bruising on visible parts of the neck, and the stillness, almost staged. And perhaps most damning, the security logs that were supposedly destroyed have now conveniently resurfaced in fragments. They show that two guards assigned to Epstein's unit were both asleep for over 3 hours, at the exact time the footage goes dark. And then there's the body language. Former federal agents analyzed the press conferences held after Epstein's death. Pay close attention to the U.S. Bureau of Prisons spokesperson. Rapid blinking, inconsistent eye contact, tightly pursed lips. These are textbook indicators of discomfort. One former interrogator said, and I quote, "This is the face of someone who's not telling the full story." Even nonverbal cues from Attorney General Barr, who initially declared there were serious irregularities, showed a stark shift in tone as more questions surfaced. Let's talk connections. We already know Epstein's circle was filled with celebrities, politicians, and billionaires. But the deeper we look, the messier it gets. Names like Bill Gates, Prince Andrew, and yes, even entertainment moguls have surfaced in connection with Epstein's flights and private meetings. Recently leaked court documents suggest that some of these names were purposefully redacted in official filings. Why? Who benefits from protecting these identities? And that brings us to Sean Diddy Combs. You might think this is a separate story, but it isn't. Just weeks ago, a verdict was delivered in a civil suit against Diddy that unearthed troubling parallels to Epstein's case. Allegations of trafficking, exploitation, and private parties involving underage participants. Sound familiar? The media has treated them as unrelated, but some former prosecutors argue this is a pattern, a system of protected elites who believe the law does not apply to them. The symbolism is hard to ignore. Epstein's Island, Little St. James, was described as a playground for the powerful, complete with temple-like structures and bizarre underground rooms. Photos show lavish dinners, hidden surveillance systems, and a parade of guests whose visits were never recorded on flight manifests. What were they hiding, and who was watching? To understand how deep this goes, you have to go back to Epstein's original plea deal in 2008. Prosecutors had mountains of evidence, dozens of victims, financial records, corroborating testimonies. But somehow Epstein walked away with a sweetheart deal, barely serving time. Years later, the judge overseeing that case admitted the victims had been denied justice. Why did the system bend for him? Who pulled the strings? Now let's pivot to the role of the media. When Epstein was first arrested, coverage was wall to wall. But after his death? Crickets. Reporters who dug too deeply were suddenly reassigned. Whistleblowers who spoke out were smeared. One ABC News anchor was caught on a hot mic saying, "We had the story for years but couldn't run it." That's not incompetence. That's complicity. It's easy to dismiss conspiracy theories, and many of them are absurd. But there's a line where coincidence ends and pattern begins. When cameras fail, logs are altered, guards fall asleep, evidence is lost, and witnesses disappear, it's no longer irrational to ask hard questions. It's irresponsible not to. Think about what's at stake here. If Epstein was just the face of a broader network, a facilitator rather than a mastermind, then who's still out there? Who's still operating in the shadows? And more importantly, who's protecting them? The public has a short memory, and that's exactly what powerful institutions rely on. But with every leak, every whistleblower, and every independent journalist unwilling to back down, the pressure builds. The Epstein story isn't over. In fact, it might just be beginning. Now let's connect this to the broader picture. The elite protection racket isn't new. We've seen it with Harvey Weinstein. We've seen it with R. Kelly. And we're seeing it again in the whispers around Silicon Valley billionaires, tech moguls, and political donors. Epstein's operation wasn't unique. It was just the one that got caught, the one that cracked the surface. Take one example, Epstein's financial ties to intelligence agencies. There's substantial speculation that Epstein acted as a middleman, gathering compromat blackmail material on high-profile individuals for leverage. Former Mossad agents have been mentioned in court documents. Why was Epstein's mansion wired with cameras in every room? Why were there safes filled with tapes labeled with names and dates? Who has those tapes now? What's even more suspicious is how many people in his orbit have conveniently distanced themselves. Powerful men who once called him a genius, suddenly pretending they hardly knew him. How do you reconcile decades of documented contact with public statements that deny it all? It's selective amnesia at best, deliberate misdirection at worst. Let's not forget Ghislaine Maxwell. Her trial brought more questions than answers. Where are the client names? Where's the list of buyers, of enablers, of co-conspirators? Why were so many details sealed from the public? Maxwell was convicted of trafficking minors to no one. How does that make any legal sense? Even after Epstein's death, the pattern continues. Witnesses go missing, lawsuits are quietly settled out of court. The press stops asking questions, and public outrage fades until the next leak. That's why this matters. Because the story isn't just about what happened in that prison cell. It's about the machinery built to keep it from being told. Here's another angle. Think about the systemic failures. The financial institutions that continued doing business with Epstein after his first conviction. The universities that accepted his donations. The scientists who collaborated with him. Either they didn't care who he was, or they benefited too much to speak out. That complicity spans every sector of influence. We need to ask, where does accountability begin? When does the silence become guilt? It's not enough to condemn Epstein posthumously. The networks he built still exist. The infrastructure that protected him remains untouched. And if nothing changes, it's only a matter of time before another Epstein emerges. We don't have all the answers, but we have more than enough to demand them. The justice system failed. The media failed. The institutions meant to protect the vulnerable looked the other way. But the people haven't forgotten. And now it's your turn. What do you think happened that night? Who's still hiding in plain sight? Drop your theories in the comments. Share this video. The only way the truth survives is if we keep asking questions.